Hey guys, before we start this video, I want to thank today's sponsor, June's Journey. It's a free-to-play hidden object mystery game set in the 1920s. You play as June Parker, who is trying to find out what happened to her sister who was murdered. You go from scene to scene trying to find specific objects. Each scene will have its own set of objects that will be listed on the bottom of the screen that you have to find, and some of the objects are clues that help June figure out exactly what may have happened to her sister. To me, this game is very relaxing and addictive. I've been playing it a lot during my breaks at work and when I'm editing these videos. I've been playing it so much actually that I never give my energy bar a chance to refill, since I'm constantly going back to play it some more. As the game progresses, it gets slightly challenging, but that's what makes the game more fun. It allows you to put your sense of observation to the test. The story has a lot of twists and turns as you uncover June's family's many secrets. So if you want to find out more about what happens, the download link will be in the description below. Again, thank you to June's Journey for sponsoring this video. Southwood Middle School, a school located in Palmetto Bay, Florida. In this video, we'll be discussing about three close friends, Michael Hernandez, Jaime Goff, and Andre Martin. All three were 14 and in the 8th grade. They have been friends for years and got along really well. However, one early morning in February 2004, something unimaginable happened. Michael Hernandez was born on February 2nd, 1990. He was the youngest child out of the two. He was described by his mother as a bright, talkative, inquisitive child. Michael was said to be a happy child and always seen smiling in photos. Teachers described him as an ordinary teenager, really smart, and a nice, quiet kid with a great sense of humor. They said that he was very charismatic and would socialize with just about anyone. As good as Michael was as a student, teachers did say that he would get into some trouble in class. Nothing serious, just things like talking in class, walk around the classroom when he wasn't supposed to, but that's about it. Overall, he was fine and rarely caused any trouble. In the morning of February 3rd, 2004, Michael was taken to school by a neighbor, which apparently was a common thing. Michael arrives at school and around 8:30 a.m., he was hanging out with his best friend Jaime. The two were on the second floor of the school, laughing and joking. They were hanging outside of the bathroom waiting for Andre to show up. You see, the previous day on February 2nd, Michael had asked both Jaime and Andre to go into the bathroom and to go inside the handicap stall because he wanted to show them something. When all three went inside, Michael asked them to go into the handicap stall. However, Andre was hesitant about going in, but Jaime wasn't. Andre said he had a gut feeling that something was off. When they walked inside the bathroom, Michael immediately puts on a hat. Not only that, it was said to be really hot that day, yet Michael was wearing a windbreaker jacket. Andre, noticing this unusual behavior from Michael, he tells him no. Suddenly the bell rang, and Michael, being a perfectionist, he rushes to get to class on time. Thus all three left the bathroom. But now it's the next day. 8:40 a.m. Andre never met up with them, so now it's just Michael and Jaime in the bathroom. Once the two entered the handicap stall, Michael told Jaime to turn around as he said it was a surprise. As he stood behind Jaime, he covers his mouth and began stabbing him repeatedly. He stabs Jaime 42 times, and to make sure he really dies, he slits his throat. Michael left Jaime hanging over the toilet. He stood over Jaime to make sure that he was dead. He then stashes his knife in a hidden pocket in his backpack and began to start cleaning himself up. But shortly after, a student walked into the bathroom and saw Michael washing his hands. When the boy asked Michael if he notices the body, Michael replied, "Yes, we should tell somebody." The two then rush out of the bathroom. One of the school's counselors, Bob Lunier, received a call while he was in the cafeteria and was informed that a student was found injured in the bathroom on the second floor. He rushes upstairs to the scene and found Jaime hanging over the toilet. His first thought that maybe he fell and hit his head. He runs back out to get a pair of latex gloves and brought a security guard with him. By then, the police were called. The two lift Jaime and drag his body out of the stall. They thought they could perform CPR. Bob recalls that there were no cuts on his face. He says, "As we dragged him off, His sweatshirt had kinda come up around his neck. I pulled the sweatshirt down to take a pulse, and that's when we saw. And what they saw was his throat cut open. Jaime had both of his jugular veins slashed, along with his windpipe. 9:15 a.m. It's first period. Michael arrives 5 minutes late to his computer class. It was said by a classmate that when he walked into class, they noticed he had blood on his shirt, leg, and around his nose. The teacher noticed the blood on Michael and questions him. He claimed that he ran into a door and that's where all the blood came from. The same student has said that Michael barely talked and was unusually quiet that morning. Remember, Michael was said to be talkative. Michael, noticing the blood on him was drawing all his attention. He tries to go to the bathroom, but the school was on lockdown already, so he couldn't leave the classroom. Meanwhile, a student in the class had a radio, and because of that, the students in the class quickly realized that someone in the school was hurt. When the police had shown up, Michael had turned to his classmate and whispered, "Oh shit." Word was spreading around the school that someone was robbed and that the police found a gun. Around 3 p.m., Michael's mother had left work, and when she arrived home, she was called by a detective. She was informed that her son Michael was a witness to the murder of his best friend. His mother was afraid, thinking how traumatic it must be for her son to witness the death of his best friend. His mom picks up his dad from work and they both went to the police station where Michael was being held at. When they saw Michael, they said he had no shoes, just socks. He tells his parents, "I didn't do it," and puts his head down on the table. They wanted to talk to their son but were afraid as they were warned that anything they said could be used against them in court. His mother did reach over to Michael's hand and asked what happened, but Michael didn't respond and stayed silent. Detectives were having trouble understanding Michael's story of what happened. Michael kept giving the police different versions. One of these versions included Michael seeing a teenager that went by the name of Sangre go into the bathroom and kill his best friend. Michael wasn't allowed to go home and was placed in a juvenile detention center overnight. His parents were confused and scared, but they were still hoping that Michael would come back home. However, they would soon wake up with news that would change their world forever. 3 a.m. Michael's parents woke up from a call from the juvenile detention center. They were informed that they would be charged $2 a day for their son's room and board. But what they didn't tell them was that Michael had confessed to the police that evening and said that the teenager that went by Sangre did not exist. Michael admitted to killing Jaime. The police discovered a gravity knife in his backpack that was covered in blood. Michael said he planned the murders for over a week. He was wearing a jacket, a hat, and gloves to conceal physical evidence. He thought the jacket would prevent getting blood under his clothes, and as we know, that didn't work. He also wore a hat thinking it would prevent leaving hair at the crime scene. He said that Jaime did try to fight back and block the blade with his right hand. Once dead, he stood over Jaime's body and jabbed the knife into his face and scalp to make sure that he was dead. He said he felt satisfied when he realized that Jaime's eyes were lifeless. Afterward, he flushed his gloves down the toilet. He says the reason he wanted to kill both of his friends is because they both knew that Michael wanted to become a serial killer once he turned 18. By dawn, trucks had pulled up in front of Michael's parents' house. The entire house was lit up by lights from the cameras, their house phone ringing non-stop by the media requesting an interview. This went on for a few hours, but by then, Michael's parents knew that their son was the suspect. The police showed up the next day and went through Michael's room to search for any evidence or clues. They ended up taking his computer, his games, and his journal. Michael's mom was still in disbelief. She would tell herself that it never happened, or maybe if she shows up at the school, she'll find her son there and everything would be back to normal. As mentioned earlier, Michael was known to be a very well-liked kid in school, always smiling, telling jokes, and making people laugh. However, there was a hidden side of Michael. The classmate from the computer class had said that Michael would occasionally visit adult websites in class, or websites depicting dead and dismembered corpses. Another student who witnessed Michael and Jaime together the morning of the murder said that for a while, around November 2003, Michael's background screen on his computer at the school was a photo of severed heads. A teacher was told by a student that Michael once brought a knife into the classroom, but the teacher wasn't informed about this until after the murder. Another instance where Michael punched students but would tell people he didn't remember doing so. Michael's mother says he exhibited signs of mental illness that at the time she ignored, thinking it was typical teenager behavior. As Michael aged, he became disconnected from his family. He even banned his parents from entering his bedroom. She says he had a routine that he had to follow and would have a list of things to do from the moment he wakes up in the morning until he has to go to bed at night. She says that he showed repetitive behavior, typical of obsessive compulsive disorder. But it gets worse from here. The journal that the police had found in Michael's room revealed a lot more of what was inside the mind of Michael Hernandez. In his journal, he would write about his fascination with serial killers and violence. He was obsessed with serial killers such as Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and mass shootings like Columbine. On the page there was a list of goals that he wrote down. Go to other countries. You will be a serial killer and mass murderer. Stay alone. Never forget God, ever. Have a cult and plan a mass kidnapping for New World. Be an expert thief. Have many weapons. Own many vehicles. In another list, Michael described the plan to kill Jaime, his older sister, and Andre. On top of the page, he listed the materials he needed for this murder: hats, jacket, knife, gloves, and tape. All of this information was proof that this murder was premeditated, and Michael was charged with first-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder. For the next 4 years, Michael would remain at the juvenile detention center trying to work out a plea bargain. The family argued that their son was mentally ill, and hopefully his confession would be repressed. A judge ruled that Michael is mentally ill but competent to stand trial. Michael's attack wasn't random. He didn't go through an episode and decided one day he wanted to kill his best friends and sister. It was a calculated attack, and he didn't show any remorse in court. He was evaluated by 2 psychiatrists, and they determined that Michael didn't suffer from a mental illness that would have impacted his decision to commit the murder. The parents didn't have expectations for their kid to come back home anytime soon, but still hoped that Michael could be placed somewhere where he can get psychiatric help, medication, and proper education. But there is no hope for any of that. November 7, 2008. Michael Hernandez, now 18, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder and 30 additional years for attempted first-degree murder. In the courtroom, the judge looked at Michael and said, quote, "Jaime trusted you, and for that innocent trust, Jaime would die alone and frightened on that cold tile floor. You were not insane under Florida law that day." Michael's mother was able to tell the Gulf family that she was sorry, but also said that her son suffers from mental illness and that he doesn't deserve this fate. The Gulf family had forgiven Michael, but that day, Jaime's dad looked at Michael in the eye and pleaded, "How could you? Why? It hurts, Michael. You hurt a lot of people. You hurt them bad. I hope and wish for you that you find peace." Michael would occasionally glance at him, but he didn't show any reaction. He declined to speak. But 8 years later, some possible hope would come for Michael. In 2016, Michael Hernandez's original life sentence had to be reconsidered after the US Supreme Court ruled that juveniles could not automatically be sentenced to life without the chance of parole in 2012. Michael tried to convince the judge that he was a changed man, that he wasn't the same person that brutally killed his best friend.
And Calvin Lori, today's testimony was about as dramatic and as gripping as it gets. Over the course of the last 12 years, we've seen Michael Hernandez in court, but until today, we had never heard from him.
I had to learn over years how wrong it was, what I did, and how much pain I caused you. I'm sorry.
An apparently apologetic and remorseful 26-year-old Michael Hernandez taking the stand and speaking directly to the parents of a classmate that he stabbed to death 12 years ago.
And I wanted to apologize to his family, to his mother, and his father, because I didn't always feel this way.
Prosecutor Gail Levine wasn't buying it. She laid into Hernandez, saying that he is the same 14-year-old who stabbed his friend Jaime Goff 42 times in their middle school bathroom.
How'd you muster up those tears?
I feel horrible about what I did.
Do you have any tears coming down your face?
Yes, I have tears coming down my face.
Because I haven't seen you wipe your nose or wipe an eye.
Hernandez was sentenced to life without parole in 2008, but in 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that juveniles could not face such sentences. He hopes that a new, lighter sentence will eventually mean a new life out of prison.
I want to get married. I want to have, kids one day.
But the state wasn't done with him yet. Levine even had him address his sister in open court, who Hernandez had once included on his hit list.
I love you, and I had absolutely no intent to ever do anything to you. I was mad one day, and that's all it was.
The Goff family left the courthouse after another day of reliving awful memories and choosing not to speak to the media until the resentencing is over. And tomorrow we should hear from Jaime Goff's mother. It will likely also be the last day of the hearing.
The judge truly believes that Michael is the same kind of person he was in 2004. In court, the judge read transcripts of a phone call he had with the pen pal. What Michael says in the phone calls are quite disturbing. The judge read it in court and said, he says on those phone calls he can't understand why so many mass killers kill themselves before they can enjoy what he calls the glory and the fun. He would also joke about his inability to cry, and the pen pal would play heavy metal music with violent lyrics.
You're a man.
Well, why don't you practice your weekend learning how to cry?
Oh my God. God, man, I may have to stab myself.
Oh my God.
I try to bring a sharp object to the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have something in your hand, Mr. Hernandez? No. Stab. Oh, see, I can cry.
Hernandez was convicted of murdering his classmate, 14-year-old Jaime Goff, stabbing him more than 40 times. Hernandez returns to court Wednesday to see if his life sentence will change. Prosecutors will argue he should spend the rest of his life in prison. In another phone call with his father, Hernandez seems fixated on certain music.
All right. Type in bleeding through.
Into blood today?
Yeah, that's gonna be the theme. Let's see how many bands with blood I know.
Love lost in a hail of gunfire?
That's that one. That seems appropriate for today, huh?
After hearing the phone calls, the father of the victim told us Hernandez should never go free. He hasn't changed, Jorge Goff told us. He was sentenced to life, and we want the same sentence. Hernandez's lawyers and families have always argued he needs psychiatric help, not prison.
Well, as his mother, my fondest hope would be that he get a more appropriate sentence, that he would be able to get the help that he needs.
A judge will decide if Hernandez gets another chance at life. We've also learned from that webpage Hernandez works in the law library.
In the end, he was resentenced and it remained the same, life in prison without the possibility of parole. 2017, about a year later, Andre Martin, now 26, became a police officer in Miami. During the time of the investigation, Andre's identity was hidden from the public. He says, "It absolutely pushed me toward law enforcement, seeing how the detectives protected me, my identity, and handled the case." Andre recalls 6 months before the murder, Michael said in passing that he wanted to become a serial killer. However, Andre just brushed it off, saying he didn't think anything of it at the time. He's happy with his life decision and says he's happy to help and protect his community. April 29, 2021. Michael, now 31, has died in prison. Surveillance video captured him collapsing to the floor. No foul play is suspected. A cause of death is still pending to this day, but they believe he may have died of a possible drug overdose. His death didn't leave anyone happy, including his victim's parents. Jaime's parents said that they were both shocked when they heard Michael had passed. "We were not expecting that at all. We've been hurt. We don't want to see anyone die or hurt like that. Even though we went through what we went through, we were not happy to hear that Michael Hernandez was dead in jail." For Jaime's mom, she said that she was crying a lot. To her, the news of his death was sad. They sat with Michael's parents and Jaime's mother told them that they know how painful it is to lose a child. Michael's parents were upset about the death of their son and have apologized to Jaime's parents many times, but the Goff family forgave them years ago. As for Andre, he heard about Michael's death a few days after he died. He noticed that he got an automated message from the prison informing him that an inmate's custody status had changed. The death of his childhood friend brought him mixed feelings. My continued condolences for Jaime Goff's parents and the entire Goff family and the Hernandez family. They were not the ones who committed a crime, and they did lose a family member. A street was renamed to Jaime Goff Way in 2018 in honor of the 14-year-old boy. The bathroom where the murder took place has been remodeled. In 2007, once all the kids that were attending El Southwood during the time of the crime were gone, as all of them had graduated. So with that, they remodeled the bathroom to move on. It's said to be barely recognizable. Jaime may be gone, but he will forever live on in the hearts of his loved ones.